Alright, hello everyone. Yeah, I say that fully pretending like I have viewers. Somebody requested that I make a tutorial to show how I built this thing, or at least how I got the landing gear to work. As you can see, it's a small hovercraft that's designed to use the power cores, the power couplers, I mean, as landing gears. So here's how it works. You just go up, they retract, and then when you go down, they extend. And they work pretty well as landing gears. So this is going to be a quick tutorial. I hope it's going to be quick anyway, just to explain how I made it work. So here we go. Alright, so I built this thing. It's basically a simplified version of the landing gear from the hovercraft to make it easier to explain. I'll just show you quickly how it works. As you can see, it's the exact same thing. Landing gear goes up and down. So just to explain how it works, basically I got this thing here that simulates when we go airborne. The blue one is going to trigger when you're landed, and the green one is going to trigger when you're airborne. As you can see, the blue one has lights on it. Now it's the green one. So there's that. And maybe it looks weird that one way there's 3 and on the other way there's 2. It's gonna make a lot of sense pretty soon. So just before we get into that, I'll just look at the settings real quick. I got the pistons, they're both the same. So speed 4, starting position 1, we want them to auto reset, so you just need to adjust the speed basically. And then we got the steering hinges. These are a bit more interesting. We need speed 2, angle at 60, no steering help, and we want them to hold position. And there's a slight delay of 0.3 seconds on them. They're both the same. And then the other little neat thing is the settings on the power couplers, because the 2 ones on the sides are the same, but the one in the middle is less stiff. The reason for that is that we reduced the overall stiffness so that it's easier to move, but we still want them to maintain some rigidity. So the 2 ones on the sides, they end up being the ones that support the weight of the ship, because they're like vertical pretty much. So the ship has something fairly rigid to land on, or to sit on, I guess. While the one in the middle is super not stiff. Forget the right word for that. But basically this one is made at 0 so that it's easier to move the whole thing. That way it flexes really well, but we still retain the rigidity to have it work as a proper landing gear. Alright, so for the logic itself, we have these 2 distance sensors and a bunch of OR logic gates. The blue into the blue and the green into the green, obviously, just to keep it easy. So in both cases, we want to make sure that at all time these 2 pistons are going to be closed. So the first thing that's going to trigger in both cases is going to be an output for 1 second of negative into the pistons. That's to make sure that they have enough time to fully close either way, that even if we're close to the ground or far away from the ground, so they both do the same thing. And you're going to notice this one has a delay of 0.4 seconds, while this one doesn't. So I'm gonna tell you right now, this is totally unintended, but for some reason these are glitched, and they are taken straight from the hovercraft, the same craft that you may have been using if you tried to replicate these from the workshop link that I put on the previous video where the ship is showcased. So I'm gonna explain to you how it works, and then we're gonna rebuild it properly, so you're gonna know exactly what to do. And if you try to make it work before, you're probably gonna figure out why it didn't work. So if you use these things directly this way, it wouldn't be quite the same. So here we go. So just to keep it simple, we're gonna start with the one with only 2 OR gates. That's the one that's gonna trigger when we're airborne. So there's this one that we already looked at. What it does is bring these to a close. That's going to bring the ship to its normal state. That's the negative output. And then we have this one that gives a positive output to the hinges and to the piston. They both need half a second of positive output. That's the reason why this one has 2 and this one has 3, because when we want to go on the other side, it's the same thing for the piston, but then we need half a second of positive into the piston, but half a second of negative into the hinges, because we want them to go the other way while we're close to the ground. So we'll look at it in action a little bit more, just so you can see what's happening. If you just pay attention at the ore gate, especially the blue one and the one at the top, you'll see that there's something fishy happening. Like it sort of flashes, then it goes away. If you look at it now, see it flashes, goes back, and then it turns on again. Like there's clearly something wrong happening there. So what I'm gonna do is I will rebuild this table, and we're gonna redo the whole thing on the other side, and we'll build it properly so you know how to do it yourself. So I'll be back in just a jiff. Alright, so here's our second table. That's the one where we're gonna build the whole thing again. So we'll just get started. We need one block like that, and then the pistons. So we'll just grab some pistons. In the middle here, I'm using tubes right now, but honestly you could use anything you want as long as it's 6 blocks long. So we're just gonna use, actually we'll use these instead. It's gonna be the same result. There we go, we got 6, and then we get another piston. The orientation of the piston doesn't really matter. And after that, we need something to put a suspension on. I'm using pipes here, but obviously we can just use a small 1x2, just like that. And then the pistons themselves, I guess we'll need an extra block here as well, so I'll just put it. The pistons, we'll just find them here. Goes this way. We'll get the other attachment point to point in the right direction. And then the other one is going to go here. Again, we'll just rotate it in the right direction. Then some hinges. We'll just double check to be sure. The green arrow goes up, so we'll make sure that this one does the same. Up. And the same thing on the other side. There we go. We'll put some power couplers. 3 of them. I guess we'll make them look good, just like on the other side. This way. And now for the settings. So the pistons. For speed and no auto reset. We'll remove the controls. For speed, no auto reset. Same thing here. Of course, you could do both at once, just like that. So these are the same. Suspension. I found that what works best for me was 1-1 on the stiffness and dampening. Obviously, that's going to depend on whatever ship you're going to build with this, or I don't know what else you could build with it, honestly. And then the hinges. These are the important ones with more setups to think about. So delay 0.3, speed 2, angle 60, steering 0, and hold position. So we'll remove the controls. 0.3, speed 2, angle 60, no steering help, and hold position. It should be the same thing, right? Yep. So we'll just do it again on this one. Remove the controls. Delay 0.3, speed 2, angle 60, steering help 0, and hold position. The only reason why you want to remove the steering help is that the only effect the steering help does excuse me, is remove the it makes it so that the hinges move slower if the ship is moving faster. So we don't need any of that. If we are close to the ground and we're about to land, we want these to move as fast as possible. But it would work the same way for most circumstances, even if you didn't touch this thing. The other thing, the power couplers, as I was saying earlier, these two are going to be at 0.5, and the one in the middle is going to be at 0. So 0.5, 0, and 0.5. And now we have physically anyway, the same thing on both sides. So now we'll get started with the logic. Alright, so for the logic, we're just gonna reuse this part here. That's just gonna simulate the takeoff and landing sequence anyway. So we're gonna need OR logic to trigger these parts. We're just gonna go get these right now. OR gate, first one, and then the other two. There we go. So now we have the same setup. We'll just link them already before I forget. So the landing goes here, and the takeoff goes here. And I'll just go one by one. So for the first step on the landed sequence, I guess, we need the pistons to retract. So that's 1 second of negative, 1 second of negative, like this. And I'm gonna make the fix right now that I was talking about. This one here shows 0, but it should require 0.4, just like this one does. I don't know why this one works the way it does, it's glitched right now. But yeah, when you build it, you want to put it at 0.4, whichever one you use to bring the pistons down to the closed position. So then if we keep going, we need half a second of positive in the pistons. So that's half a second of positive in the pistons. And then we need half a second of negative in the hinges. So that's half a second of negative in the hinges. This way. And then for the airborne sequence, I guess, we'll need the same thing for the beginning. So 0.4 delay, 1 second of negative for the piston. So 0.4 delay, 1 second of negative for the piston. It should be the same, yep. And then we need half a second of positive for everything, so that's why we can do these on the same logic gate. So all of these, they want half a second of positive, just like that. So normally it should work the exact same right now. Let's see what happens. So when we're landed, it's in the right position. And when we're taken off, it would do the exact same thing. And just to show you what I was talking about earlier, if we were to use the same setting as we have on the other side, which are the ones that are on the ship, so I don't know why, again, it's doing that, but if I remove this delay here, what's gonna happen is the piston is not gonna have time to extend properly. It's just gonna, well, I'll just show you. So this sequence works fine, but then you see it does the right motion at the bottom, but honestly it's kind of glitchy. Sometimes it's not gonna work right, and making it extend makes it so that it's safe, but now it doesn't have time to extend because there's no delay on it. So if you just put the delay back like that, then we're gonna have the same sequence on both sides. And again, it seemed to work just fine right now without the extending and retracting, but when I was building the ship I had so much issues that kept popping up every time the motion was happening with the stuff I put next to it. It seems like the game starts to struggle with it quickly, but if you do it this way it should remain stable for the most part. So this is going to conclude the tutorial. Hopefully this was helpful. This is the first time I do something like this, so if it's confusing or convoluted or whatever, let me know in the comments, I guess. Thanks to Pele Christensen 744 for requesting the video. First time that happens, so sorry if I butchered your name, by the way. I'm going to put the link in the description for this new contraption I built over there. If you want to use that instead to try to figure out how it works, in case you want to study it a bit, I guess. And I guess that should be it for this one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.